Story 1. I am still in high school, but I also work for my school as part of the student worker program, which I love that it exists. Now I am a part of a audio-video production or film class. Now I regularly get asked to take photos of which I have become dead inside, because most of the time, it's the freshman who asks. Everyone else knows already since I'm infamous around the school for being everywhere. I show up to every sports event and school bonfire. So I am at a volleyball game, and I had set up my equipment on the stands of the away side, which is always uncomfortable for me since I'm wearing bright red and white school colors in a stand full of the other school. Texas sports fans are serious about any sport. So one day, a group of parents walks in, 2 dads and 2 moms, of which each notice me. Now, while I work, I listen to podcasts by Trash Taste, which are hilarious. So one of the moms who saw me was upset with the fact that I was smiling with a video camera while staring at volleyball players. So her response, "Come up to the row behind me and wait." When they stopped for the 1-minute break, I got up and talked to my partner, who was on the court controlling the videos and music that are played. When I turned back, and I'm pretty sure about this, ran and yelled the loudest I could at the woman who was messing with every button possible on my camera. I yelled loud enough for everyone to hear, even over the music, which was loud. When I got up there, I grabbed my camera from her and told her what she was doing could result in a $1,000 fine, which I was wrong at the time. It was actually $3,000 for what she did, plus obstruction of work. She simply said I was some creep who was smirking and leering at the girls. Now my work badge is my school badge, but when I work, I flip the ID card to my student press a V card, which has in bold words student worker. But she was calling me a fake and an imposter creep for pretending to be a student at the school. Luckily, as she said this, our head of sport department, our principal and assistant principal showed up and asked what happened. Now this is where it gets good. Fun fact about camera storage cards: when you have not 1 but 2 storage cards that are both 132 gigs, you can basically keep recording, even if they are not playing, to make editing much easier. So now after they all walk up, the mother said I was a creep who was pretending to be a student at their school, who was also filming the girls play for private reasons in my own time. Now the head of the sports department is the first to speak, and is the only to speak, seeing as he had enough authority to end it all in a few sentences. "Ma'am, he is a student who I asked to be here to record this game. Seeing as it is a district game, we want to be able to look at this footage anytime to review and teach the younger students what to do." And he says to me, if I remember right, "You leave your camera always recording, and with that mic always running." I shook a light nod. Well then, let's take a look at what happened. The video is watched, and the lady is taken out of the building by our local school cop, and I'm given a free hot dog and water bottle. We have since then made student press shirts with bigger and bolder letters, so even a blind man could read it. Story 2. My father married step-monster. My stepmom came from a different country where it is common for ladies there to marry foreigners and use them to move to our country, then pop out a child or 2 to lock him down. Stepmom and dad frequently borrowed money from Nana, never paying it back, and their house was full of useless stuff. But here is where the real story starts. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, so it was decided that a granny's flat would be built so my grandparents would live while dad and new family would move into the main house. My grandparents would put a mortgage on their home to build the granny flat, but dad and stepmom were fully responsible for the payments. My grandfather passed away before completion or any of the legal paperwork dividing up the ownership had been signed. My dad and stepmom go to my grieving Nana and have her sign a 55-45 split. Dad and stepmom still frequently borrow money from Nana, obviously not making the mortgage payments. Stepmom almost left dad for a Nigerian scammer before Christmas. Dad got diagnosed with cancer 3 months later. Stepmom started to show her true colors. She loved to play victim to all the friends they had, claiming she had to do everything since my half-sisters didn't help around the house, and that my older sister and I never saw our father. Easy to sell since both of us had full-time jobs and lived over an hour away. She also had two of these friends try to confront our half-sisters, but instead ended up facing the wrath of our entire family and two of Dad's oldest friends. Stepmom started to lock their bedroom door, denying all access to him, especially Nana. He was her only child, and she had recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's herself. Also, family was the most important thing to Dad, so being cut off really hurt him, but was sold as, "None of them want to see you." My older sister talked to Nana about changing her will and having the two of us named power of attorney and guardians. Stepmom kicked up a fuss about this because the current will leave pretty much everything to Dad. So if my dad died and the will wasn't changed, she would get it all. The will was changed so that everything would be split equally between the 5 grandchildren. I arranged for an assessment to see what community services Nana would be eligible for or need. Stepmom found out and decided to sit in and try to tell the worker Nana didn't need any services, as stepmom would, for the first time in 5 years, take care of her, also known as controlling Nana. I shut her down using her martyrdom against her. Dad got worse, so my whole family rushed to see Dad. Stepmom lets us in to see him. We're all talking, comforting him and each other. But what is stepmom doing? Texting some random dude at my dad's bedside as he is literally dying. Dad passes a day and a half later. I had to call the ambulance while one of my half-sisters had to do CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, on him. Stepmom is nowhere to be found at the time. I had to tell my family while stepmom called all her friends and had them flood the house while her children grieved with us. She didn't console or comfort them in any way ever. At the wake where Dad's real friends and family are, we informed some of her friends about her actions. They were disgusted and told the rest. Within a month, stepmom has shacked up with a new boyfriend and is trying to have a kid to lock him in, but she has gone through menopause. Stepmom started to visit Nana when our side of the family wasn't there so zero that she could trash talk us freely. Once it became clear Nana can't change her will to include stepmom, she stopped visiting even though she lives 6 feet away. Nana's health declines and a second assessment decides she'd probably be better off in assisted living. This means selling the houses that stepmom has a share in and hasn't made a single payment on since Dad's death. A house that's been trashed and Granny's flat that doesn't match the council-approved plans. Sister and I make sure that legally the mortgage, cleaning costs, skip hires and building costs to get the Granny flat up to code come out of stepmom's share. So the house sold for $600K. Stepmom got $60K once everything was all settled. Stepmom has blown through it all in 6 months and was kicked out by her boyfriend. Story 3. I 33M do not have the best relationship with my father. In fact, I resent him. It wasn't always like this. There was a time where I probably would have helped him bury the bodies if he asked me to. But now, I can't look at or think about him without getting heated. This story goes back to 2011 when I got accepted into college. It wasn't my first choice, but it was a good school, and I was proud. A little background: I was diagnosed with severe ADHD as a kid and had a learning disability. For me, college was a dream. My mother went Ivy League and my father was a 2ND Gen college student, so higher ed was an expectation on my fam. As a kid, my first grade once said, in front of the whole class, that I'd never go to college and would be lucky to get a job flipping burgers at BK. Seriously, fuck that bitch. I worked hard in high school, took honor SAP classes, played football, and eventually got into 3 universities, choosing my safe school mostly to get some independence from home. When I got my acceptance letter, everyone was happy, especially my father. But the next day, he changed. He started by pushing me to join Afroc. I wasn't interested, and then to major in engineering. I've never been into math or science. My passion was history. But he pushed hard. He got family, friends and engineers to pressure me too. His game plan, as he put it, was simple. Here's the plan. He told me with his shit-eating grin, "You're going to take engineering. That way you can get a great job after college. And once you get that job, I won't pay your loans." It sounded practical, but I still wasn't interested. He turned the whole college road into being about him. Dictating clubs, stopping me from playing football, even forcing me into a crappy minimum wage union job that ate into my checks. I finally put my foot down and said that I was taking history. He looked like I'd canceled Xmas. 2 weeks later, he gave me the ultimatum. I pay the piper, I pick the tune. If I didn't do engineering, he'd cut off my college fund. Backed into a corner, I gave in. I hated every second of it. I was miserable, behind in my classes, exhausted and ashamed. Eventually, I switched to poli-sci, since I'd always been interested in law. When I told my dad, I expected some understanding. Instead, he looked me in the eye and said, "You should have cut yourself off from the family." That broke me. He called me selfish, reckless, reminded me he was my benefactor, and still demanded the right to control me. From there, things only got worse. Fighting, manipulation, snooping, gaslighting, even using my autistic bro to dig my transcripts. At one point, I attempted suicide. When I told Dad, his response was basically, he was glad I didn't go through with it because otherwise he'd have to pay for a funeral. That's my dad for you. Years passed. I blocked him for a while, eventually only emailed. I didn't invite him to graduation. When I later ranted to my mom about how much I resented him, he overheard on speakerphone. He was shocked and hurt that I felt that way. I half apologized just to keep family peace. Fast forward, I am now a homeowner, engaged to an amazing woman, and working toward law school. My dad found out about my engagement through a family friend. Recently, since he retired, he's been trying to rebuild our relationship. Against my better judgment, I let him visit. I set simple boundaries, and he agreed. But during the trip he spilled kombucha all over my carpet, got mad at me for being upset, and didn't even try to clean it. Made me wait 15 minutes at a golf course because he was drinking with strangers. Criticized my house and suggested upgrades that he wouldn't pay for. Called me his dinner companion during a business call instead of his son. Passed out drunk while nearly burning down my kitchen by leaving chili on the stove. I completely lost it on him. By the end, I told him flat out that I don't trust him, that he's selfish, self-righteous, and throws tantrums when he doesn't have his way. If he weren't family, I would have cut him out years ago. I drove him to the airport the next morning. No hug, no goodbye, just walked off. Now he wants to try again, but I honestly don't see the point. He destroyed my trust years ago. Nothing has changed. Story 4. This happened a few years ago, but after working over 10 years in retail, starting when I was 16 to save for college and amenities, I have run into many entitled customers. However, this one particular woman still gives me flashbacks. This is a long one, but I promise the absolute entitlement of this woman is worth it. I was 23 at the time and working at a convenience store. My coworker, who we will call Liz, was working with me. This particular day was July 11th. If you have ever gone to or worked for this store on that day, you know that July 11th or 7-Eleven Day is their promotional day. A predetermined number of child-sized slush drinks are given away for free. The amount depends on the number of guests, and some years it is universal across all locations. Usually, it is around 100 to 200 free child-sized slush drinks, and these are often all claimed by noon at our location. It was now roughly 7 in the evening. We had not had anyone come in for a few hours asking about the promotion, but the store was busy with regular customers because it was hot and gas was cheap. Our location had an attached gas bar. A woman around 40 came in with a Chihuahua and Jack Russell mixed dog. At first, I ignored it until she set the dog down and it began charging at other customers, trying to bite while growling and barking. Truthfully, I almost always ignored patrons with small dogs they could carry, since they were generally well behaved, and there was not a place to tie them up outside. If I did not hear the dog, I did not mention the dog. But this woman had no control over her animal, and the situation was quickly becoming a liability. While keeping a safe distance, I told her she could not have the dog in the store because its behavior was a liability for both of us. She immediately began proclaiming that she knew her rights and the law and insisted that the dog was allowed. I asked whether the dog was a service animal or an emotional support animal. She said, "No, but it's my dog. I can have my dog in here." She was getting visibly annoyed, and after some back and forth, she walked the dog to the front door and threw it out the door onto the pavement near a man she must have been accompanied with. And when I say threw, I mean she threw this dog about 5 feet onto the pavement, and it bounced off before walking over to the man waiting outside. That alone told me this woman was going to be a handful. After hurling her dog to the pavement, she came back into the store and selected a few items. 2 cans of cola, some candies, and she wanted hot food. Then she loudly announced, "I want a free slush drink," while looking around at other patrons as if trying to gather support. I calmly explained that it was a promotional event, and we had already run out of the promotional cups. I began ringing up her items. I could not give her a free slush drink even if I wanted to, because the regular cups were counted as inventory. However, this was her complete undoing. I heard her mutter a mild insult under her breath, which I ignored. Over and over, she complained about the free slush drink, saying I was ripping her off. I was about to get her hot food when she reached over the counter and said, "You must be proud of yourself, kicking out a dog. Look at your face. Your mother probably never wanted you. You should have been tossed aside. You're a failure. That's why you work here, you miserable, unkind jerk." At this point she was loud, and more than 10 customers were shaking their heads. I suspended the transaction and told her to leave. I was completely fed up. She shrieked. "You have to serve me," I replied. "No, I don't. You are being hostile, and I won't be treated this way. Please go, or I'll call the police. You are unwelcome." I turned my back, set her items behind the register, and hoped she would leave if I ignored her. Instead she kept repeating, "It's my right, give me my stuff," while hurling more insults. Then she began insulting other customers. She became so hostile that I called the police. She was approaching customers, trying to explain herself, and when they ignored her, she insulted them as she had insulted me. I told her repeatedly to go. She could not mistreat paying customers, and she was unwelcome. Each request to leave was met with more insults. One man had enough and physically guided her out of the store by walking forward until she moved. She finally left the store. I thought, finally, what an entitled person. About a minute went by while my coworker and I continued ringing up more customers. Then she came storming back inside. I had finally reached my limit. As soon as the door opened, I yelled, "No, get out. You are not allowed in here. You need to leave." She charged up to the counter, knocking over displays, shouting absolute nonsense, mostly insults, and claiming it was a public space and she could be there. This went on for another 5 minutes. My coworker Liz, who is French and normally shy and quiet, finally spoke up and told her to go. I was shocked she even said anything. The woman mistook Liz as Middle Eastern, mocked an accent, and told her to go back to her own country. She added another awful comment about explosions and called her unkind names while throwing more merchandise to the ground. Liz laughed in her face and told her she was being obnoxious and racist, and she needed to leave. The woman asked for my name. I gave it to her. I gave her our corporate number. I told her the entire situation was caught on camera and she could call as much as she wanted. My patience was gone, and every response from me was, "Lady, you need to leave." The man from earlier finally yelled at her, telling her to leave or he would make her leave. That finally made her go. She sped through the parking lot, blaring her horn. Finally, she was gone. I called my boss because I knew she would complain, and I told her what happened. I thought that would be the end of it. A day later I was called in. Here we go. The woman's complaint claimed I threatened to harm her over her service dog, that she was a frail old lady, and that I came out of the store and threatened to damage her car. She said I swore at her, embarrassed her, and threw merchandise at her. and she demanded I be fired or she would seek further legal action. Her complaint was so far from the truth that I actually laughed. My bosses were stone-faced, believing this woman and thinking they were about to be sued. Given the allegations, everything went to legal and higher management. Finally, after reviewing the footage and hearing from customers who called to report being verbally abused by her, management told the woman she was unwelcome and would have a no trespass order placed on her. They confirmed I was within my rights as an employee and told her, "Your complaint was false. We checked the cameras." My district manager even apologized to me. I thought, wow, what a disaster, but at least I prevailed. No, of course not. For over 2.5 months afterward, the woman had her friends come into the store with dogs, all to provoke a reaction. They would come in and say, "I saw the sign, but can I have him in here?" They knew the rules. And the woman was waiting outside watching to see what I would do. When I informed my boss, she checked the cameras, confirmed it was the same woman orchestrating it, and had her criminally charged with trespassing. That was finally the end of the entire ordeal. So, yes, be careful when trying to make sure your customers do not get bitten by Karen's Chihuahua. She might try to have you fired. Story 5. I have one more "I don't work here" lady story. Not as cute as the Disneyland one, but hopefully as entertaining. I work as a dentist in a really small rural town about an hour outside of our mid-sized city of about 250,000 people. Because I'm one of the only dentists in town, and because I'm the only one that will do more complicated extractions and root canals, I dress in surgical scrubs every day. I got tired of laundering blood stains out of dress shirts and white lab jackets. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. I visit my cardiologist about every 6 months just to keep him in business. This last time, as I was checking in at his front desk at the hospital for my appointment, I apparently offended the giant lady behind me by having to update my insurance information and address with the nice lady behind the desk. I was midway through giving the nice lady my new address when the giant lady taps me aggressively on the shoulder. "Can't you guys talk on your lunch break or something? I've got another appointment after this." Immediately, I turn on my impassive, expressionless face I use with my own agitated patients. Rather than responding immediately, I finished giving my information to the nice lady. When I was done, I turned to face the giant lady who was not pleased with my delayed response. I am not a small man. The word husky has been thrown around a time or two, but I felt small standing there with her glaring down at me. "I think you've confused the situation here, ma'am. I am a patient here checking in for my appointment. As soon as the nice lady is done with me, I'll go sit down and you can check in." I thought I was polite, but I think the nice lady was smirking or grinning behind me because the giant lady just about had an aneurysm on the spot. "I've been coming here for 6 years, she screeched. I just stared at her evenly. "I know you've drawn my blood before." I just kept staring blankly for a moment, then said, "No, I haven't. I'm a dentist." And at that moment, I remembered her. She had been an emergency patient I had seen one time only for a toothache years before when I worked in a practice here in town. It had been a catastrophic visit, and she never came back. She remembered me at the same moment, and she saw in my expression that I remembered her. "Oh yeah," was all she said and stepped back. I quickly wrapped up my business with a nice lady and meekly sat in a chair. The giant lady eventually made her way into the waiting room and sat with her back resolutely towards me until I was called back by the nurse. I went through my cardiology checkup and had forgotten about the giant lady by the time I was done. As I went to leave, I waved at the nice lady on my way out. Pro tip: always be extra polite and kind to the office support staff. They have way more influence over your provider's attitude towards you than you realize. How you treat them can influence how your doctor treats you. The nice lady waved me over before I left and told me in a quiet voice that I was the first person to ever shut the giant lady down mid-attack. I guess the giant lady is in there at least monthly, and she is always rude and demanding. and most people being intimidated by her size just defer and let her have her way. I just smiled and said, "Ha, guess I'm just lucky." She smiled and I walked off. I am not lucky. What I couldn't say because of HIPAA, American law governing the sharing of personal health information, is that when the giant lady was my patient, for exactly one visit, I had pulled a really loose infected tooth for her. After the really simple extraction, as I was placing some gauze over the bleeding hole in her skull and telling her to relax in the chair and not stand up too fast if she felt lightheaded, she did exactly that. She stood straight up, immediately swayed, and passed out crashing headfirst over the chair into the tray of used instruments. The chair completely gave out and collapsed, screaming and groaning to the floor. I swear to God it screamed as it died. The giant lady released her bladder in her collapse, and the reek of urine literally made my assistant retch. We spent the next few hurried minutes getting her revived and on oxygen. I'm not a small guy, as I've said, but we could not physically move her, and once she was down, apparently she could not physically move herself either. She had to lay there over our twisted chair, breathing on oxygen, cursing, bleeding from her mouth, in a pool of her own urine for a solid 15 minutes, until 6 burly EMS guys could squeeze into our little overcrowded operatory to hoist her up and escort her out to the ambulance. She was not pleased. She apparently recovered and lived to make the lives of other healthcare workers full of interest and entertainment. The chair, however, did not recover, had to be replaced. I've seen her one other time since then in the far-off distance of Walmart, putting along laboriously on a motorized cart. I guess the moral of the story is that if you are going to aggressively mistake someone as a lazy employee of your doctor, make sure first that he's not someone you already know from an extremely embarrassing prior encounter. Story 6. It's 2014 and I separate from the military. I then keep looking for any job to get myself up and off of unemployment. For all those people who keep spouting nonsense about things not being true, when you separate from the military, you are allowed to go on unemployment like anyone when they lose their job. Anyways, I find a job working for security. Cool. Simple enough, and I still have my certifications like CPR, First Aid, and ED, Automated External Defibrillator. I go to orientation and get my guard card and all that set up. We are given a lot of company information and customer information. Basically, the security company is hired to secure buildings for other companies. Common thing. I got my first post, and it's really relaxing. People are friendly, staff is friendly, I like it. Everyone is doing their job well. Feels good for once I don't have to stress about my workmates being jerks. A few weeks go by, and we lose someone on my shift. Damn, okay, they were great. I wish them the best. A week later, we got a new guy. Let's call him Marshmallow. Let me tell you this, I wasn't prepared for the poor quality this guy would bring to the shift. He was slow, back-talked everything, always had his phone out in front of customers. The most off-putting thing about him was how he breathed like he was sucking in air harder than a vacuum. Kinda an exaggeration, but you get the point. Well, looks like I'm gonna have to try and be political about this. I'm his coworker after all. First time I approached him went like this. Hey Marshmallow, could you put your phone away? I don't want the customers to think we don't care. But I don't care, so what does it matter? Breathing like he is trying to keep a small flame from going out. Listen, I know it can get boring here, I get that. I even bring my phone out. Just not in front of cameras and the customers. Marshmallow does a raspberry laugh. Listen, you ain't my supervisor. You are a security guard like me. Now go away before I tell human resources that I'm being harassed. Holy heck, what is wrong with this guy? All I can think is my building will be ruined because of this guy. I should note that our current supervisor didn't care. He was about to leave and only had 2 weeks left. Start the exceedingly worst behavior. Soon he started coming into work looking like a slob. He didn't tuck in his clothes and refused to wear the radio. Never had his guard card on him. Just clear violations for dismissal. Every time I would approach him trying to deal with it at the lowest level, The response was, "You ain't my supervisor." It was starting to feel like an Archer episode. We usually get 45 minutes for lunch, but we always let each other have an hour. Perk of being in a slow building. He started taking breaks way over the 1 hour we're supposed to have. He eventually got to the point where he was taking 2 hours lunches, and his reasoning was he had to pray. 2 weeks pass and the supervisor leaves. I'm hoping to get someone new who can fix this crap, and I can move on. Turns out they are having issues filling the position, and the one in charge of the building is a zone supervisor, and he has about 6 buildings to watch over. His reply to my complaints is, "I don't have time for this, handle it on your own." At that point, I just say screw it. I start to look for new jobs. I come across a supervisor's position for the same company. My head starts to click, and I start to think about what I could do if I became a supervisor. Oh heck yeah, Marshmallow, you are about to get screwed. I applied for the position. I put my absolute best foot forward. I even pay to get help making my resume look as good as possible. All the while I start writing down everything Marshmallow is doing on camera, marking the date, time, and location. A few days go by, and I get a call for an interview. I smash the interview like it owed me money. I get a call the next day, and am hired to be the supervisor for the building I already work at. I start Monday next week. The crew hears rumors about a new supervisor, but no clear information. The rest of the week I hear Marshmallow talk crazy crap, telling everyone how the new supervisor is going to be a coward and how he is not going to do anything. Monday comes and I come in. Now mind you, supervisors don't wear a uniform, they are allowed to wear regular clothing. Marshmallow, all that whining about me and you don't even bother to come into uniform. Man, you're a hypocrite. I just smile as I walk up to him. Can you put your phone away and tuck in your shirt, please? He looks at me without missing a beat and says, "How many times do I have to tell you? You ain't my supervisor. Are you refusing to put your phone away?" He just looks at me for a second and looks back to his phone, saying nothing. Okay. I start to walk away, heading towards my new office. Marshmallow, quit acting like you are some important person. You ain't any different than me. A few hours pass, and I have been on the phone with Human Resources and the shift supervisor. I gave them all the information I had and requested to fire him. Human Resources confirms he must be fired and escorted out of the building. When you fire someone at this company, you have to have at least 2 supervisors to escort him. The shift supervisor tells me he will help me personally. He arrives, and he approaches Marshmallow. He looks up at us and then back down at his phone. The shift supervisor gives me a "can you believe this guy" look. Marshmallow, I'm going to need your badge and radio. You are being let go due to several violations. Gather your stuff, and we will escort you out of the building. Is this a joke? Man, get out of my face before I hit you so hard. You can't do anything to me. You're not the supervisor. Wrong. I am your supervisor. I have been since this morning, and you're fired. He looks towards the shift supervisor, who only nods his head. Marshmallow is taken aback. He doesn't know what to say. He slowly gets up and gathers his things. We are almost to the door when he turns to us. I'm not going to take this lying down. I have done nothing wrong. I'm going to Human Resources and will get you both fired. Human Resources were the ones who said to fire you. At this point, the best thing for you is to just leave and move on. We got him out of the building, and he slowly walked out of sight.